I was saying Yashabal Rico from Street Scores, and I had so many things that I wanted to talk about that I felt like, you know what, we might as well just go ahead and put it together into a May 12th edition of Rico Report. We have a lot of things to discuss. We have the fact that Luke McCaffrey is more like his brother than you think. We're going to take a look at their relative athletic scores, their athletic profiles, and everything like that. Compare each other. Crazy. Also, Jayden Daniels' rookie deal potentially coming up. We have a potential number that he may end up signing. Also, are we destined to have a top 5 defense in 2024? We have an RFK Stadium update. I have some really interesting information behind the Wizards' number 2 overall pick and the history behind that pick, and also some very random interesting stats all over the place and much more. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Still cooking up the Johnny Newton video. I'm thinking maybe I should just wait a little bit more for maybe another update, but I may just go ahead and knock that one out tomorrow. So be on the lookout for the final draft pick breakdown that I have to do for this class. If you haven't already checked them out, I did breakdowns for every other draft pick and even some notable undrafted free agents as well. And then I'm going to move on to doing film sessions for every draft pick and notable undrafted free agents. So stay tuned. I have a lot of different video ideas. And of course, again, your one-stop shop. So I'm going to keep y'all updated on everything Commanders, just like in this video. So stay tuned. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get to this video, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so let's kick it off with Jayden Daniels. Per the Sun US, Commanders quarterback and second overall pick Jayden Daniels will sign a $37 million rookie contract. During his time in college, he made a fortune from top NIL deals such as Raising Cane's, Powerade, and other various endorsement deals. And it's actually really crazy too, because when Keyshawn Johnson had that hour-long interview with him and asked him how much money he's making and things like that, he just kept playing it real low-key and even just straight up said, I wasn't making no money in college unless you wasn't paying me and stuff like that. I thought that was hilarious, but of course we all know that he has all of these different commercials. He had commercials before he even got drafted and things like that. But again, nothing final. But there are reports going out there saying that he'll get a $37 million rookie contract. We'll see what happens with that. Also, the Commanders have already officially signed Luke McCaffrey, Jordan McGee, Dominique Hampton, and Javonte Jean-Baptiste, the rookie deals. Those are 4. Now we just have 5 more to go, including Jayden Daniels. Once we finally get that done, you typically get the later picks done first, and then you move your way up. That's just how it typically goes. Hopefully, we don't have one of those situations where it was like, I think it was Nick Bosa or Joey Bosa. One of the Bosa brothers like held out for a really long time, like going into training camp, didn't even sign his rookie deal yet. Like a really weird situation. I highly doubt we have something like that happen here with anybody, with Johnny Newton, who's recovering from an injury right now, or Mike Sanford still, Ben Sinnott, that group of 3 second-round picks. I think we're pretty straight, and then we'll see what happens with Brandon Coleman. Just looking at the order from going from the back of the draft, working our way up, I would assume maybe Brandon Coleman is the next to get a deal, but I mean, there's no exact order that they have to abide by. That's just how it typically goes. Now, moving on, speaking of Jayden Daniels, you know, there was a lot of chaos with that number 5 number being transferred from Tress Way to Jayden Daniels. I'm not going to dive too much into that because I've already talked about it a little bit, but JP Finley brings up a great point on Twitter. He said, underlooked aspect of the Commanders number swap is how much it highlights Josh Harris, Adam Peters, and Dan Quinn. They did this right. Let the players handle it. In the old days, zero chance that the new franchise quarterback doesn't just get his number immediately right away. Also, Tress Way is an A-plus human. I completely agree with all of that. If this were the Dan Snyder era, he would have stepped in immediately and took the number 5 off of Tress Way's back to give it to Jayden Daniels. So I love the fact that they just kind of let the players handle it. And apparently Tress Way said that originally he said no, and then after he really just sat on it for a while, he said he didn't really feel good about it, and that's what made, and then they ended up come into a nice agreement and with certain ways that Jayden Daniels is going to help out Tress Way. So that's cool. Not going to sit here and dive into that. But also, Resh Manuel brought up another great point as well. This perfectly illustrates why I don't expect Tress Way to pursue many numbers current players wear, including Kiyu Blue Kelly, who wears Tress Way's 36, because again, he went on like the Washington Commanders. It was a whole thing where, I mean, you have to fight back tears watching it because he was struggling to even speak about having to give up the number 5. It was crazy. I'm really rooting for Tress Way, just even outside of football. That's my dog right there. But Resh Manuel brings up the point that Way knows how much it means, especially for undrafted free agents, to fight to belong in the NFL because he's been there himself. So I'm assuming he's probably going to end up getting a number that nobody else has. He's not going to try to fight for any number again, even like a Kiyu Blue Kelly, who has the number that he wore in college, just from his experience of being at the bottom of a roster, fighting as hard as you can to make a roster. He doesn't want to do anything to hamper anybody's opportunities in the same situation that he was in several years ago. Now moving on, as far as Redskins that have worn number 5 throughout history, you have Abed Ariri, you have Billy Cundiff, Brett Conway, Heath Schuler, Donovan McNabb. Sadly, that did not work out at all. Kurt Knight, Tress Way, of course, and don't forget Jeff Hayes as well, and now is Jayden Daniels. So that's just like a quick history on the number. I would easily argue that Tress Way wore that number very well, and you could even argue that maybe he's one of the best to ever wear that number for us. And even though it took a lot for him to actually pass the number on to Jayden Daniels, I am happy that he passed the baton at the end of the day. I feel like it is the best of both worlds. But man, again, shouts out to Tress Way. And also, speaking of numbers, with Mike Sanford still having the same number 2 as De'Ami Brown, with all of the numbers that were available that nobody on this roster has. Again, we only have 91 players. I mean, only... That it does sound crazy, but there's still other numbers available. And so the fact that they gave him number 2 is interesting. Like, are they fighting for the same number now? Is De'Ami Brown on the edge of the roster? Are they trying to tell us something? It's even crazier that they can even have like a direct battle for the number 2. That's the crazy part. Like, Mike can cover De'Ami in practices. So it's not even just a matter of who's having the best off season. They can actually battle against each other one-on-one, especially in training camp. So I just thought that was really interesting. Also, moving on, we have a stadium update. So the RFK Stadium bill will be taken up by the Senate's National Park Subcommittee on Wednesday. And this was reported all the way back on May 9th. And we only have a few days to wait until we see what comes of that. 2 sources told at FOS. HR 4984, which would allow for a potential new Commander Stadium to be built on the land, passed the House in February. So, just to let you know, we're getting one step closer to RFK being remodeled into a whole new stadium, demolished and all of that for the new Commanders. We're getting one step closer to that. We'll see if it ends up happening. It's going to be a very long process. This is not something we're going to get an official answer on, a finalized decision on anytime soon. But I'm going to keep y'all updated on any random steps that happen. Remember, I reported like a couple of weeks ago that the people that check and make sure that a demolition is even safe to have in an area like that with so many people living around there, they approved of it a few weeks ago. So that was a major hurdle that they had to get over. They got over that. And then now we're on to the next step. We'll see what happens this upcoming Wednesday in 3 days. Now, also, let's start to get into some random stats. First of all, Terry McLaurin is different. If you didn't know, shouts out to Austin Abbott for this on Twitter. Terry McLaurin is the only receiver to hit these marks in each of the past 4 years: 75 plus receptions and 1,000 receiving yards. Nobody else in the NFL. He said, listen to this: 132 targets, 1,002 yards. It barely made it last season. 120 targets, 1,191 yards. 130 targets, 1,053 yards. And 134 targets, 1,118 yards. In a full season, Terry's never averaged higher than 8.93 targets per game. I would argue that the volume has room for growth, but this hasn't stopped his production or consistency. McLaurin currently has the second longest active 1,000 yard streak with 4. Only Mike Evans with 10. People sleep on Mike Evans, has more right now in the entire NFL. Would love to see Jayden Daniels feed Terry 150 plus targets and watch him truly pop off. Reminder: health, played 17 games 3 straight years. Age and size: 28 years old, 6 foot even, 210 pounds, and he's currently on a contract that was 3 years, $68 million. Terry McLaurin is different, and I love the fact that he's getting love from somebody outside of the Commanders fan base, reporters. This is a fantasy football type of guy that's looking like, hey man, Terry McLaurin is a sleeping giant. Once he gets a good quarterback, he's going to skyrocket in fantasy value. And so he's basically just giving everybody the warning that, all right, sleep on Terry McLaurin if you want to. If Jayden Daniels goes out there and looks as good as a lot of people expect, it could be serious for Terry McLaurin's stats, fantasy value, all of that type of stuff. Also, as far as Commanders fans are concerned, his recognition around the league and the national media is one of the top wide receivers. Again, he gave you stats as to like Terry McLaurin is the only receiver in the NFL doing this one thing, and only Mike Evans is better at him than doing this other thing out of every receiver in the NFL. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now moving on to another stat. Shouts out to @Copo_72 for this one. Random stat of the day. In 4 games over the last 3 seasons against Dan Quinn coach defenses, Daniel Jones has 193 total yards per game, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, 3 fumbles, and has taken 15 sacks. So we finally have a Giants killer. Remember, the Giants have been the Commanders killer. Even in seasons where we were literally better than them, they always find a way to beat us. When Daniel Jones is healthy, suddenly he looks like Josh Allen against us, but then throughout the rest of the season, he looks like typical old Daniel Jones. Well, now it looks like with us bringing over Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr., we may have finally brought over the solution to somehow figuring out Daniel Jones, which is just crazy to say out loud because other teams are probably looking at the Commanders like, y'all really struggle that much with Daniel Jones? He's somebody we have to figure out. It's literally only us. I mean, along with the Giants, just to get off topic a little bit, Kayvon Thibodeau only has great games against us. Against anybody else, he's really doing nothing. But when he goes against the Commanders, he looks like the next Nick Bosa. It's absolutely insane. But either way, man, I briefly mentioned that the fact that that Dan Quinn was a Giants killer when we first hired him, but I don't believe y'all gave y'all the stats for that back then. So, you know, just to go ahead and give y'all those, and also sticking with Dan Quinn for a little bit longer. Shouts out to Warren Sharp for this long tweet as well. He tweeted it back on May 7th. He said Dan Quinn was the Cowboys defensive coordinator the last 3 years and is now the Commanders head coach. In Dallas, his defense ranked number 1 in interceptions with 59, number 2 in forced fumbles with 49, number 2 in takeaways with 93, number 1 in defensive touchdowns with 15, and number 1 in takeaway EPA 394. During that exact same amount of time, the Commanders defense ranked 30th in interceptions, 32nd in forced fumbles, 29th in takeaways, 14th in defensive touchdowns, even though that's pretty much almost all Kendall Fuller. I believe Montez Sweat had like 1 against Dallas on Thanksgiving, I think that was, and then 29th in takeaway EPA. So Dan Quinn has been on the completely opposite side of the NFL. His defense has at worst been second ranked in some of the most important defensive statistical categories, while we've been dead last in pretty much everything except for we've been in the middle average with defensive touchdowns. He also goes on to continue saying defense was a huge issue in DC during Ron Rivera's tenure, which is crazy. 2 ex-linebackers as your head coach and defensive coordinator. What happened there? The Commanders signed a ton of edge linebackers and DBs in free agency. Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler, Cleveland Farrell, Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner, Jeremy Chin, Michael Davis, and Noah Igbenogany. And we also drafted Jerzon Newton and Mike Sanderstill. After raising the Cowboys to the NFL's best havoc defense, it will be interesting to see how quickly Dan Quinn improves the NFL's worst Washington Commanders defense from last year. And hey man, please save us Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. Please. Is it too much to ask of them to expect them to be able to take our defense that was the worst in the NFL last year to top 10, maybe even top 5 within just one offseason? Is that too much to ask? Well, again, it does help that you went and signed all of the free agents that you got as veterans, and then you drafted the guys that you drafted, and then on top of that, you also hired the coaches that you hired. I know it's really hard to expect such a big leap in one season, but we definitely have the recipe to do it. I mean, if anybody you can bet to make a leap from one of the worst defenses to one of the best, it would be the Washington Commanders this season. And I think I'm buying stock. I'm not gonna lie, I may go ahead and buy that stock while it's low, because I really think our defense is gonna go out there and ball out. I think I'm more sure about our defense being great than even our offense. I think our offense has the potential to be extremely explosive, one of the best offenses in the NFL, but it's a difference between potential and belief in the offense and like pure complete confidence that I think that the defense will go out there and ball out. And then Luke McCaffrey, let's go ahead and talk about him, because he's more like his brother than you think. First of all, just taking a look at some of their combine numbers like you see on the screen right now. Shouts out to Mark Tyler of Hogs Haven for pointing this out. They are very similar here. Like the 40 time is almost the exact same. If anything, Luke is a little bit quicker, a little bit faster. 10-yard split, the exact same. Broad jump, the exact same. Christian McCaffrey has them slightly in vertical. And then Luke McCaffrey has the better short cone. And also, they're right there neck and neck with 3 cone, but Christian McCaffrey has the slightly better version of that. I mean, they're almost clones of each other when we're talking about athleticism. But you know what? As a matter of fact, how about just for fun, let's compare them in both in terms of wide receiver athleticism, relative athletic score wise. We're going to put in Christian McCaffrey and Luke McCaffrey and see what their athleticism scores look like as if they both turn into receivers. If you turn Christian McCaffrey to a receiver so we could directly compare him to his wide receiver brother, here you go on the screen right now. And as you can see, when you put them both as wide receivers, Luke McCaffrey is clearly the better athlete. Now, granted, Christian McCaffrey's size, with him being 5'11" and 202 pounds, and he only benched 10, and we don't know what Luke McCaffrey would have benched. It probably would have been less, probably would have actually lowered his relative athletic score, since we don't have that piece of information working against him. We have it clearly working against Christian McCaffrey. But then again, even though he only benched 10, he's a very strong running back. That's not something you have to worry about. But either way, the main point is Luke McCaffrey, even with some of the information that we don't have all the way provided, looks like the better athlete if you compare them as wide receivers. But then, okay, I get it. Measuring them up as wide receivers is unfair to Christian McCaffrey. So how about we do it on a running back scale? Well, there you go. Luke McCaffrey is still the better athlete. And now, granted, Christian McCaffrey's relative athletic score went up because he is a running back. He's not a wide receiver. No, he kind of does both, honestly. But Luke McCaffrey's relative athletic score also went up. It went from a 9.44 to a 9.75 now. So, hey man, you can argue athleticism-wise, ceiling-wise, is Luke McCaffrey just straight up the better athlete than Christian McCaffrey, the guy with the higher ceiling, the most potential, regardless of position, if we're talking running back or wide receiver. I just wanted to show y'all that to prove my point that Luke McCaffrey has a very high ceiling. And again, he's only scratching the surface. He's only been playing wide receiver for the last 2 years of his life. He was playing quarterback all the way up until 2 years ago, and he still tested that well at the combine. So the sky's the limit for this guy. I'm telling y'all, a lot of people look at him and don't necessarily think very high ceiling wide receiver. I'm telling you right now, very high ceiling wide receiver, loads of potential, can end up being a great receiver. Like I talked about in my breakdown, he looks like literally a more athletic, of quicker, faster Puka Nacua. So I'm excited to see what he turns into, but it's just crazy that how similar he is to his brother in a lot of athletic metrics, measurables, and things like that. And then when you actually go do the relative athletic score, he's actually a better athlete than his brother at both running back and wide receiver. Now let's move on to some more 2024 draft class love, because every time I see more love for the draft class, I'm just going to update y'all on that as well, because it just keeps going. It just keeps going and going. So you have the 33rd team, and it's via former NFL GM Jeff Diamond, as you see on the screen right now. And as you can see, he felt like the Eagles had the best draft with an A+, the Steelers had an A, and then the Washington Commanders had an A as well. And I'm not surprised at how much love the Steelers are getting, because a lot of the players that I really wanted in this draft, they got a lot of them, man. I'm still mad at the Steelers for taking like 2 or 3 of like my guys. Like, I'm putting my name next to the fact that they're going to be great NFL players. So I'm not surprised there. But again, that's love, because for the Commanders, it's the Eagles, Steelers, and that's it. That's that 3, and then you have everybody else with A- or less, and then you get all the way to the Falcons. You know I'm the biggest Falcons hater doing it. Employee of the month Falcons hater, so I love to see the fact that they have the lowest grade. And then also some more love. As you can see, CBS and Sports Illustrated gave us an A+. You have the Ringer, AP, Sporting News, NBC Sports, Pro Football Focus giving us an A. And then you have USA Today, NFL Network, and ESPN giving us A-. Either way you look at it, all of those places gave us some sort of an A. I'm telling y'all, a lot of y'all are really low in this draft class, but just watch out. This is going to turn out to be a really great draft class. Now, of course, it's hard to grade a draft class, first of all, before they even play a single snap, but really you should wait until a couple of years down the road. Really, we need to wait until we get into that next rookie contract. I mean, outside of the rookie contract, there's second contracts for these guys. So really like 4 or 5 years down the road is when you can truly grade draft classes and things like that. But still, man, the love that we're receiving from the draft classes, it feels good. I mean, I felt like walking away from the draft, we had a great class. class, but the fact that everybody else agrees shows that it's a new era in Washington, because it felt like no matter what we did, no matter how great or bad anything we ever did was, everybody always disliked it. Now everybody, for the most part, likes what we're doing. Now, in very random news, shouts out to Irvin Magic Johnson. Back on May 30, took a picture with Terry McLaurin and tweeted, "I took Commander star receiver Terry McLaurin to lunch today in Los Angeles to talk about the Commanders' life after football and his entrepreneurial aspirations." So I love that, man. Magic Johnson reaching out to Terry, and they're talking business. They're talking about life. It's not even just about sports and football. I absolutely love that. Shouts out to Irvin Magic Johnson for that. Also, I know y'all have been seeing on Twitter lately the difference between Jayden Daniels' release and Drake Maye's. Here's the video if you haven't seen it yet. Shouts out to Tan Todd Podcast for putting them next to each other like this. And I'm not gonna lie, Jayden Daniels' ball is, like Tan Todd said, is literally almost halfway down the field while Drake Maye is still letting his go, and they both started their releases at the same time. You can definitely see it a little bit better with the slow motion version of it, but that is still crazy. That speed of that release, and I saw it on tape, even though I think Drake Maye is very talented. Again, I prefer Jayden Daniels, but I still think Drake Maye is gonna work out. But that difference in release could make a huge difference in how people even cover against you and things like that. You know, if Drake Maye is out there releasing the ball that slow, even with his rocket arm, even if his arm is stronger than Jayden Daniels, if he's releasing it later, then Jayden Daniels' ball will still get to the target sooner. So we'll see how much that matters at the NFL level, but those releases are definitely different. But I said that months ago when breaking down the differences between Jayden Daniels and Drake Maye, that Jayden Daniels had the quicker release. I gave you the advantages of Jayden Daniels. I gave you the advantages of Drake Maye. It just went back and forth. Like, this guy's better at this, but this guy's better at this. I told y'all Jayden Daniels' release was quicker, and then that exact example side by side, I didn't even know it was that dramatic. And then also, before we move on, even Patriots head coach Gerard Mayo said, as far as an early impression on Drake Maye, he said he has a lot to work on, which sounds like a guy that's not going to be ready to play week one, even though it's already been announced that Caleb Williams will be the week one starter. I'm assuming that Jayden Daniels, even though his hasn't been announced, but I'm assuming he's going to go out there and earn that week one start. You don't use a second overall pick on a guy that doesn't start week one unless he just goes out there and looks terrible, but I highly doubt it. And then you have Drake Maye here, who may not even be ready to go week one. And then maybe some of the quarterbacks that were even drafted after him. I think that even though he probably shouldn't start week one, but I think the Denver Broncos may force Bo Nixon to start in week one. And I wouldn't be surprised if J.J. McCarthy earns the week one starting job over a guy like Sam Darnold. So, hey, man, I just thought that was really interesting to point that out. Not trying to hate on Drake Maye, because, again, I would have been happy with him as well. But it just further confirms that I feel like we made the right decision. Now, also, let's get some clarity on some fairly chaotic situations. Let's start with the fact that shouts out to Scott Abraham for pointing this out, as far as the W that Dan Quinn wore with the feather on it. I already showed y'all what that looked like in another video and talked all the way about that, but just some updated information on it. He said, getting lots of questions on this. It's my understanding that NFL head coaches are required to wear licensed clothing during games and post-game, but it doesn't apply to practice. That shirt that Quinn is wearing today is not official team gear at all, and we kind of already assumed that, but shouts out to Scott Abraham for clearing that up. That, yeah, during like actual games and post-game conferences after those actual real games, like regular season, preseason, and things like that, anything outside of practice, like real scrimmages that actually count towards something, you are required to wear certain sanctioned gear by the NFL, certain gear that they approve of. So he will not be able to wear that W outside of practice, is basically the point right there. Also, even though Dan Quinn refused to give a general timeline on Johnny Newton with the injuries that he's dealing with, it was already one foot that he had to recover from. Now he has the same exact injury in the other one. But the surgery that Johnny Newton is getting, that Dan Quinn said he's going to get it within like the next week, sometime this upcoming week, like within the next few days, hopefully. But typically that surgery requires like 2 to 3 months to fully recover from. So it seems like he will be on the sideline working on his hand technique like he was doing at rookie minicamp every practice until just about like July or August, it seems. And so it seems like he should be back at least before preseason starts, but we'll see. Just wanted to do that math for y'all right there, just to give y'all a heads up on, will Johnny Newton be ready at least before preseason? We'll see. It's better for them to go ahead and get this surgery done in May before we even get to OTAs and things like that, instead of having to get it done like how we lost for Darian Mathis' rookie season for the entire season and stuff like that. And also, like I already brought up a couple of weeks ago, just a monthly reminder that shouts out to, and to DC_Rising on Twitter for this one, because I try to remember to tell y'all this every time, and every time I see somebody tweeting about it, I'm gonna remind y'all as well. And if I think about it, I'm gonna mention it in a random video like a Rico report like this one as well. If the Jets didn't make the game-winning field goal against us, Jayden Daniels is likely not the quarterback of the Washington Commanders. So remember to always be thankful to Greg Zuerlein, Greg the Leg, most famous for his time with the Rams, but shouts out to him for making that 40-yard attempt. He's on the Jets logo. 54-yard attempt, 54-yard field goal to help us get that second overall pick. Thank you, Greg Zuerlein. Y'all got to make sure y'all thank him every time Jayden Daniels is out there throwing for a touchdown, throwing for a first down, running for a first down, running for a touchdown, whatever. Anytime he's making a great play, remember to shout out Greg Zuerlein. We may even need to start a chant. I'm not going to lie. And also, lastly, before we get up out of here, congratulations to the Wizards on getting the number 2 overall pick. I know I usually talk about football, but I know this is, the Commanders are a DMV team. Most of y'all probably watching this video from the DMV are more than likely Wizards fans. So, just wanted to give y'all a brief history and some interesting stats concerning that second overall pick. But again, congratulations to getting that second overall pick in this upcoming draft. I've been hearing that this draft is weak though, but I wouldn't really know. And I don't really pay attention to like college basketball like I do with football, where I'm watching high school, even some guys middle school, especially in the state of Georgia. If you're like a really great middle school player, I already know about you by the time you're like in 8th grade. But high school, college, all of that, I'm watching everything football. But with basketball, I'm not typically that early on things like that. I don't really know, and this wasn't a very exciting college basketball season. WNBA I felt like was way more interesting, so I don't know how strong or weak this draft actually is, but that's what I keep hearing. But either way, just let you know, I'm not a Wizards fan, but I do wish y'all the best of luck for sure, so I hope y'all can find somebody great. But I have some interesting stats and info concerning that second overall pick. First of all, the last time the Wizards had the second overall pick was in 1968 when they drafted Wes Unseld. Very interesting. Also, some other notable second overall picks are Bill Russell, Jerry West, Jason Kidd, Isaiah Thomas, and Kevin Durant. So a lot of people are saying there isn't necessarily a guy like that in this draft, but you never know, man. Giannis was picked late, Jokic was picked late, Kawhi Leonard was picked very late. A lot of the best NBA players of all time were not taken first overall or even way after second overall, way into the first round, even some in the second round. So you never know. Even though a lot of people feel like this draft class is late, maybe the Wizards find the gem, maybe the Hawks mess it up and the Wizards land a really good player. We'll see. Also, it's really interesting because now, with the Wizards getting the second overall pick, they will be the 3rd DC sports team to pick second overall in the last 12 months. The Nationals took LSU outfielder Dylan Cruz second overall in the 2023 MLB draft. And then the Commanders selected LSU quarterback Jayden Daniels, number 2 overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft. So now, by law, I think the Wizards need to take a guy from LSU. So let me know who the best player from LSU is available in this draft, because by law, y'all got to keep that going. Baseball, football, and now basketball have to select LSU players with their top picks in the draft. Just make it happen, man. Find a way. Second overall picks, all to DC teams within less than 12 months. And then so far, 2 of the 3 have been LSU players. Y'all got to keep that going, man. I don't care what's going on. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. I really appreciate y'all. Make sure you do not leave this video out leaving a like. And also let me know in the comment section, out of all of these topics, which ones interested you the most? And do you agree or disagree with any points? Do you have any opinions on any of the topics, especially like the whole Jayden Daniels versus Drake Maye release situation, and Luke McCaffrey versus Christian McCaffrey, both as running backs or wide receivers? Like, let me know everything and how you feel about everything going in this video, especially the Washington Wizards number 2 overall picture. They just go ahead and go with a top LSU player just to go ahead and solidify that whole momentum and trend that's going on right there in DC sports. Let me know how you feel about everything. I really appreciate y'all. Stay tuned for more content, one-stop shop for everything Commanders. And I gotta go ahead and hurry up and catch this Ant game so we can go ahead and beat these Nuggets. We'll catch y'all later. I'm out.